Back to the Dave Thompson Show. Thank you for joining me here on AM 1130 Twin Cities News Talk and FM 103.5. I am right now very glad to be joined by Mark Steyn, a very well-known conservative writer and commentator. Mark, welcome to the program.
Hey, good to be with you, Dave.
Good to be here as well. And tell us a little bit, first off, you're speaking to a group. You've been brought in by the Center of the American Experiment. What is going to be the topic of conversation tonight?
Well, generally when I'm on stage, it's doom and decay and decline, and you can make a pretty nice living out of decline and fall for as long as it lasts. But I like to think there's a kind of upbeat angle to it too, because it's not really funny. I mean, we face serious existential questions and crises in America and Western civilization more generally, and I like our civilization, and I'd like to make sure it sticks around for my kids and grandkids, and that's what I'll be talking about.
Yeah, now, when you speak about our civilization, I think that you're referring to what most of us would call Western civilization, the idea of freedom and liberty and elevating the individual above government, which, of course, is something that really is a unique experiment.
Yeah, but it's not something that is generally, it's not the default position of mankind, and it requires work to keep it that way. And it's depressing to me that we have 50 million people on food stamps in this country, and that the United States Department of Agriculture actually promotes food stamps now in Mexico, for example, saying, you know, come to America, because the great thing about America is that we have food stamps. Well, the point about America used to be that it was the place you went because you didn't need to be on food stamps, you didn't need dependency. It was where you went to have a shot at bettering yourself and living life to the full and to its fullest potential. And I'd rather have that than have 300 million people on food stamps.
That's right. Now, you wrote a book in 2011 in which you talked about the decline of the West generally, and you warned that you believe that actually the decline that you foresee in America, and by decline, I think you and I both define that as dependence on government and less reliance on self, that you fear that decline will come more quickly than it even has in Western Europe. Explain that.
Yeah, because the great advantage Western Europe had after the Second World War was that it had America as its sugar daddy. America basically picks up the tab for the defense of Western Europe. So if you're German, for example, your healthcare system is effectively funded by American taxpayers, because the United States Army lives in Germany and guarantees that nobody's going to invade Germany. So Germany, France, all the great European imperial powers, Italy, Portugal, Austria, all benefited from the fact that the United States was civilization's sugar daddy, and there's nobody to play America for America's decline. America was there for Germany's decline, France's decline, Italy's, which is why it's relatively pleasant. Talk to a lot of your listeners; they'll say, "Oh yeah, I went on a wine tasting cruise down the Rhone in France. If this is decline, bring it on."
Right.
But there's no one to play that role for the United States. When the United States goes off the cliff, it goes off alone, and it lands very unpleasantly and painfully.
Now, if my memory serves me correctly, you focus pretty heavily on national debt. Tell me why you believe that's so dangerous.
Well, simply because nobody has run up these numbers before. Trillion used to be a word that was entirely unknown unless you were an astronomer and something was so many trillion miles from light years from Earth. When it's actually a number in a budget, and when it's a fake number in a budget, that's to say you've spent it, but you don't have it. I mean, we're now just under $18 trillion in federal debt. In 2008, it was $9 trillion. So in other words, Obama has spent more money than the first 43 presidents spent in the first, whatever it is, 2 1/3 centuries. And that's like incredible. He's the only man in human history to have spent $9 trillion. There's nobody else who's ever done that in the entirety of human history. And what's most impressive to me about it is that he spent $9 trillion and left no trace. Nobody can point to anything he actually did. He was going around before the 2012 election saying only government can build the Hoover Dam, only government can build the Golden Gate Bridge. He hasn't got a Hoover Dam. He hasn't got a Golden Gate Bridge. All he's got is, refurbished offices for the Department of Paperwork. He spent $9 trillion and left no trace, which nobody has ever. I mean, that is actually more difficult than it sounds.
Yeah, it is utterly amazing, and we just look back to the original stimulus package,
Right.
which was in the range of $800 million or billion dollars,
Right,
nearly
right.
$1 trillion. And what do we get for it?
Yeah.
Virtually nothing. My guest is Mark Steyn, a well-known conservative commentator and author who is going to be speaking to a group brought in by the Center of the American Experiment tonight, and currently is out mingling with the folks and getting his picture taken. 651-989-5855 if you'd like to weigh in after we talk to Mr. Steyn and comment on the decline of the American civilization. Now, you're a native Canadian, right?
That's right. Born in Toronto, in Wellesley Hospital, if there's any other Torontonians listening, and they tore that hospital to the ground and salted the earth because they didn't want to take a chance of that happening again. But yeah, I was born in Toronto, and I live just south of the border in New Hampshire, and I'm not far south of the Quebec border. I'm maybe about 40 minutes south. And people used to say, well, if you've emigrated to America, why do you live so close to the border? And I used to say, well, you never know when you might need to leave in a hurry. And I used to say that as a joke. And these days, it doesn't seem quite as funny a line as it was.
No. Well, I'll tell you what's been disturbing to me, Mark, and I've been following American politics very closely since I was in my teens, is when Barack Obama was elected in 2008, I was not surprised by what he was. When you looked at his history, the Reverend Jeremiah Wright,
Right.
you looked at the people that he seemed to look up to politically,
Right.
I believed he was a radical leftist.
Right.
A lot of people didn't. Even on the conservative side, they thought he was another Bill Clinton. I didn't believe that. What was more disturbing to me than 2008 was the fact that we saw what he did
Yeah.
and the degree to which he started running up the deficits and making us into a welfare state, if you will. We elected him again in 2012. Do you see people waking up, or don't you?
Well, I think that for exactly that, you're exactly right, and that's why the 2012 election was more disturbing to me than 2008. You can see 2008 people were exhausted by Bush, sick of the whole sort of 9/11 war on terror thing, and they wanted desperately to be rid of a certain kind of Republican mentality. The validation he got in 2012 was far more disturbing because it said something not about Obama, it said something about the American people.
Yes.
And that's why, and this is the problem, I would say, with the Republican Party. Mrs. Thatcher had a great line, which is an obvious line: first you win the argument, then you win the election. And by May 1979, by the time the election was declared, she'd already won the argument, and all she had to do in the course of the election campaign was win the election. And that's not what Republicans do. And there's a stage before even winning the argument. You've got to make the argument. You've
Yes.
got to make the argument. And the so-called opposition party in Washington is not out there making principled arguments in a clear and coherent way. We're killing the middle class in this country. It's not about saying everybody is to be Bill Gates or everybody is to be Warren Buffett. It's about just wanting to enjoy the same economic opportunities as your parents and grandparents had in post-war America. That will be lost. Nothing that seems terribly great to America. Just the right to raise your family in a nice 3-bedroom house on a good-sized lot in a pleasant neighborhood, which Americans take for granted. In many European countries, they don't take that for granted because they know what a rare and precious gift it is. And so just even that, if you kill the middle class, if you kill the opportunity, if you kill social mobility, then this generation will be the first generation of Americans who will live worse lives than their parents and grandparents.
Mark Steyn is my guest, a well-known conservative commentator and writer. Let me ask this question. See, I am currently a sitting state senator here in Minnesota. And when people vent themselves and vent frustration on me for what our legislature or our governor hasn't done, I point out we have a Democratic legislature,
Right.
we have a Democratic governor, a far-left governor, and first you have to win the hearts of the people, which is sort of an adaptation of the Margaret Thatcher
Right.
the idea that you have to win the argument. How do we win that argument? What is missing from our dialogue that could bring people with us?
Well, I think for a start, you have to make it at a level people can understand. When you talk about multi-trillion this and multi-trillion that, people think it's above my pay grade, but it's actually not. It's about ordinary decisions that are made every day at the most local level, at the school board level, at the municipal level, at the county level. And if you let it slide at all those, then that's why people can pull this stuff at the state, the national, and the international level. And that's why it's not about. I appreciate your position that if you're in the minority party in a legislature, people tend to think, oh well, we've got no contribution to make until the next election day, and then we might be in the majority and it'll be our turn. But I don't think it works like that. I think the job of the opposition party is to keep certain ideas in play, so that you're moving the centre toward you. You're keeping the conversation, the public discourse, in the realm of sanity, so that. And this doesn't often work out well for your particular party, but so, for example, a Democrat governor who wanted to stay viable would be like stealing 20-30% of your ideas just to keep himself politically viable. It's the Milton Friedman idea. You don't wait to elect the right people to do the right things. You create the conditions whereby the wrong people are forced to do the right things. And so every time you hear Obama reading a prompter message where it sounds like he's deferring to the founding fathers, to fiscal responsibility, you know that those ideas still have validity in America, because otherwise he wouldn't even be pretending to defer to them. And that's a sign that there's still hope, because the Democratic Party still has to pretend to be in the realm of fiscal responsibility and prudent government and all the rest of it, even if it doesn't mean it.
Now, I assume that in your comings and goings, you talk with a lot of people on all sides of the political aisle. Do you believe the Democrats understand the damage that is being done by the deficits we're running, by not taking, frankly, I believe, the war on terror seriously, et cetera? Do you think they get it and they do things for political reasons, or do they just not see it?
I think in a certain sense they don't see it, but they also genuinely believe it. They believe the answer. That's a Winston Churchill line. The left believes in the line, the right believes in the ladder. In other words, the left believes you offer bigger benefit checks at the unemployment office and people stand in line to pick them up gratefully. The right believes in a ladder, saying, here, you things are rotten now, but you climb up a couple of steps and you'd be amazed at how much better the view is. And I think the left genuinely feels the answer to poverty is more food stamps. I think there's a certain cynical calculation that they have a kind of Latin American mentality that if you expand the dependency class and the government class that administers to the dependency class, then that's basically a head start they have when they're voting, when they're for power. And I believe that, but I believe it's not an entirely cynical thing, that they actually believe that a state with permanent multi-generational government dependency as a permanent feature of life is actually good for America, and that makes them sound more caring and compassionate. And in fact, it's profoundly evil.
Yes, it is.
The point about it is not that it's a waste of money, which it is. The real point is that it's a waste of life. It's a waste of your human capital, which is the most evil thing you can do in any society.
Not allowing people to achieve what they could achieve.
Right, right.
Mark Steyn, thank you so much. Those of you who'd like to comment on Mark Steyn's ideas, give me a call, 651-989-5855. You are listening to The Dave Thompson Show on Twin Cities News Talk, AM 1130 and 103.5 FM.